Well, hello, Ali Wolfe. So great to have you on today. I am so excited about this conversation. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am thrilled to. Ever since you did a photo shoot for our Flourish brand, and we had such a great conversation that day, I was like, this woman has got to share her expertise and knowledge and insight on being a photographer with our Flourish families. I am just thrilled to be able to have you here. You know, so many people like STEM get so much attention these days, and you are doing unbelievable work. So tell everybody to start with a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I am a commercial photographer based in Westchester, Liberty Township area. I shoot primarily high school seniors and business branding, such as yours. So that's kind of what I do for the most part.
And not everybody in our Flourish communities from our area. So we're both in Cincinnati, but so you're in Greater Cincinnati. That's what the Westchester Liberty Township piece is, because we have people, actually there's people even inside my launch course right now that are from outside the United States. So we have a pretty wide reach. So we're talking Greater Cincinnati photographer. So let's go back. This is what got that conversation going, where I was like, I need her to share this with other people. I used to just think like, oh, photography, you don't need a college degree. Is it worth it? Because, is it worth paying what might be six figures for some families now to get that college degree in a field that some photographers have one, some don't? And you gave me some schooling in such a great way about the benefits for a photographer having a college degree. So can we go back in time? High school Ali is headed to college. Well, actually, your story of photography starts before that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and why you chose college?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I am a third generation photographer. My grandfather came back from the war and started a studio in the small town of Nelsonville, Ohio. And my father took it over, and they were kind of more of your life touch in the schools. But they also did some senior photos and your kind of posy soccer recreational pictures. And so I did that growing up. I went to trade shows. I was 8 years old checking people out on merchandise. It was just crazy. But so kind of along that way, my dad had some health problems, and it was around the film digital switch. And I felt like, there's probably this gap that I need filled, in the world of photography that maybe he's not able to teach me. So I thought I'll go to Ohio University for commercial photography to try to bridge that gap.
So so it was really kind of the timing of your dad's illness, plus it really was the digital age coming that kind of flipped that switch for you?
Yeah, 100%.
And so when you go to study, so the degree is commercial photography?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other photography degrees that colleges have?
Yeah. So essentially, you have a few of them broken down. There's like art photography. And then I think those folks at the time when I was there, they were kind of still on film, even though we were well into the digital era. You have photojournalism. So you're talking about documenting, creating a story through imagery, right? So think about your newspapers. The biggest one you can quote is Nat Geo, where you're going and traveling the world. And that's everybody's we call them PJs, photojournalists, their dream. And then you have commercial photographers who want to work a lot with off-camera lighting. And that's really the big drive there, is to try to create commercial products that, you want to sell to individuals or businesses, and that's really the big defining thing where I went, was just learning a lot about off-camera lighting.
I'm curious, when you talk about those three main areas, what is the biggest? If we looked at sheer numbers of people working in the different fields, what percentage of photographers maybe are photojournalists versus commercial versus more artistic? Any idea?
Yeah, I'd say you're probably, the art photography is substantially dwindled with everything being online, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of those things. I would say most people shoot in more of a PJ style. And that in order to be a commercial photographer, you really do have to have an extensive understanding of lighting and how it falls on the face and all of those things. So I would say for the ease of entry to market, most people are shooting like a PJ.
Okay. And so that's making me think, and I've seen you in action. You got some equipment there. Is the equipment part of that piece of it with getting that lighting right? And is that expensive to get started?
Yeah, it is a super expensive field to kind of get into. So the lighting is really expensive. And then the other thing of it that's really interesting is that there are very few female commercial photographers because the equipment is so heavy and you have to lug it around and you're moving it. And so I kind of tell my people, like, the reason I exercise is so I can better serve you because I get to carry all this stuff around. Like, so yeah, it is a huge cost burden.
So getting started cost wise, and I see, I mean, because obviously I follow you on Facebook and other people should too. You're sometimes outside, you're sometimes in a studio. So you've got to be ready to kind of go to all the places and do all the things.
Right. So the lights that I use in my studio are different than the lights I would use on location. And so that's just kind of an added cost. Certainly there are people that don't take strobes or lights on location because one, you're also putting your equipment at risk, right? Like wind comes and it gets knocked over, or you hire somebody to stand there and hold the light, right? So that's another incurred cost. But yeah, I am everywhere, all the places with light.
Absolutely. Well, and I have to say, like, not that this stuff was heavy, but when we've done shoots and you were recently shooting my entire team at my other brand, you're moving like a table over, not that they're huge or super heavy, but you also are still doing all those things. Now I know you have high school interns that work with you. Like, I love it. We have a college intern here at LEAP helping with us with social media. I love it when professionals give students the opportunity to help figure things out. So you're like, you have 3 student interns this fall. Is it for the school year or for the semester?
It's for the school year.
Okay. And so what advice are you giving them along the way, or advice that you could give our students on and really thinking about, like, what type of photography would I want? How do I figure out if I'm more artistic or a photojournalist, or if I should be, more going for the commercial studio?
Yeah. So there's 3 words: always be shooting. Right? You will find what you love and you will find what you hate if you are always shooting, right? I don't love shooting products. I love people. So I know that in my heart, I'm meant to be working with people and portraiture and doing that. And he found it through just shooting all the time, right?
Yeah. Okay. So what do they need? I mean, is their iPhone or is there
good
enough to start with?
Yeah, for sure. You could start there. In fact, I think a lot of my interns, that might be all they're kind of working with. So I do have a spare camera that I let them use and we can talk about the functionality of that. But yeah, just go out, figure out what excites you. What do you love to photograph? Are you a humanitarian and you love learning about people's stories? Well, then you're probably a diehard photojournalist. And if you're really into, like, wow, how the light hits in this way, then you might want to go the commercial route. And commercial, you can do products or people,
So we're talking about, like, always be shooting. So I love that advice. I'll probably call this blog entry, always be shooting, although that could be misconstrued. I should be careful with that one. So we're talking about, like, all this studio time and always be shooting, but I think a lot more goes into your job than your time just behind the camera shooting your subject. So can you kind of give us a feel for the rhythm of, just from a client, like start to finish? Like, if I say to you, like, hey, Ali, we want to get new team photos. I I wonder what percentage of your time is spent with us as compared to what is the front end work, what is the back end work, and what is that process like?
Yeah. So I would say that kind of 20% of my time is spent with you as the client in person shooting, and the bulk of it's on the back end. We kind of start, let's say you email me and we kind of discuss what you want from the shoot, what kind of shoot you want. And then we can talk about pricing and getting you quotes and those things. And then I, have a system set up where it sends you session reminders and kind of all of that clerical organizational stuff. And then, obviously we do the shoot for the allotted amount of time. And then, it's back to the computer, right? It's back to the back end processing of getting rid of the bad stuff and keeping the good and kind of tweaking the good and sending it to the client. And then I pause and wait for you to pick, and then I'm back into editing, right? So it's definitely a lot more time behind the computer than it is behind the camera.
It sounds like it. So if somebody's considering this and they love just that camera piece, they need to be super aware of all of those other pieces. If seriously, 20%, that kind of blows my mind. So you probably really like that the editing phase, I would assume, or do you not?
No, I do. I like making people the best version of themselves that I can to stay within realm of kind of how they naturally are. I think that in this profession, you have to be both creative and organized. And while I was kind of building my business on the weekends, Monday through Friday, I was like a secretary, so like having those organizational skills, and I worked in accounting, and having those number skills, super helpful for me to run my business, right? So there's no shame in hustling in another job while you build your business and build your brand to get to where you want to be.
And what would be, you kind of referenced some of them, but business skills, I mean, because you're self-employed, it's not like somebody's feeding you these clients. So what are the key business skills, traits, things that students would need to be comfortable with to be successful ultimately as an adult working? I mean, obviously they may not have all those skills right now, but to be an adult with their own photography business.
Yeah, I think customer service is huge. Making people feel comfortable, welcome, that you care. We need to do a great job at listening rather than listening to respond, right? I mean, that's a very basic skill that you can really start with. Yeah.
So, and I'm curious, and I don't know the answer to this at all, and I probably could look it up by looking at the course curriculum at Ohio University or somewhere else for their commercial photography. Like, what percentage do they give you courses and things like that outside of photography?
Yeah, and that's really the great benefit, I think, to going to a college for this, is that ultimately, college makes you a well-rounded person. I took classes that I didn't even know was a actual profession in this world. And those classes may make you pivot and go, I'd actually rather do that. And that's great, right? Because you want to find your path in the world. But it'll ultimately just make you a better human being. So while I was at Ohio University, I took, while I was a commercial photography student, the commercial photography students and the photojournalism students start out in the same courses for the first year. And it's just kind of basics, like learning how to use your camera stuff. And by like year 2, you guys kind of pivot and go different directions. But I learned graphic design, and that stuff was super helpful in running my business in terms of being able to design my own ads, right? I don't have to outsource that, or my logo. Yeah, I would recommend it 100%, just to be able to broaden your horizons, learn new skills, and kind of be forced to learn them, right?
Right. Puts you in the hot seat. Like, I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to have to pay somebody to do it. Right. For sure. Tell me about, you said you do a lot of like senior, and you mean senior citizens, you meant seniors in high school. So you do a lot of senior photos. What's kind of the rhythm of your calendar year? Like, what are I can guess a little bit, but because you also do, corporate branding and things like that. What is your calendar year? What are your busy seasons and your light seasons?
Yeah. So my busiest season, we're talking Ohio weather, right? So it's really all revolves a bit around the weather and a bit around when yearbooks are due. So for the public schooling system, those yearbooks are due here by Christmas break. And so that is my big push. So between the summer leading up to someone's senior year through Christmas break, I am in high senior time, with the highest peak being the month of October.
Okay.
Because
as the colors are pretty, right?
Yeah, the colors are pretty. And then I think people kind of want to hold off as long as they can to so that their kid looks the same. They think they're going to change vastly from fall to spring, right? I think there's that too. So that's really my high point is in October. And then it kind of dies down through the holidays for seniors. And then you may see some public or private schools pick back up in the spring. The private schools they get a Life Touch kind of yearbook photo. So for them, the yearbook deadline doesn't matter. They're more what season do I want it to be in? So you'll get a few of those, and then, you head into summer and you're back in it again.
And so also, as I'm thinking through with you doing a lot of seniors, obviously the corporate people can be done during the day. And I know you're also a mom, so your kids are at school, but what that takes some of your evenings and weekends. What advice would you have for people considering photography when they think too, how many evenings and weekends? How do you manage that with being a mom, having a family? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I actually built my business mostly on family photography, right? Because I was in the thick of it. I had small kids and I just loved my kids so much because I was just in it. And as my kids have kind of grown, I've kind of just shifted, my energy's increased. I have more time to dedicate. My kids are in school. And so seniors are brilliant in the way that they can actually do Monday through Fridays. A lot of high school seniors get out early or they start late. And so they do offer me a lot of flexibility Monday through Friday. In fact, I was just shooting one this morning. At 10 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they have random days off, the teacher and service days.
True.
That's great for me.
Yes.
So it does allow me to free up some weekend time, so that I can see my kids when they're not in school and kind of balance that out. But from in the beginning, it was a lot of weekends.
That's what I imagined. So now, and some commercial photographers, though, they're going to specialize in something else, maybe that they should be thinking differently about their calendar, their day, and their rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be doing families or seniors or, things like that. Right. So,
yeah. And it's a good profession, like any other, where you own your own business, that you can kind of make your own hours, right? I mean, you can say no to a job and that's okay. If it's not something you want to do, I probably wouldn't recommend that starting out, but there's a lot of hustle that's in there.
Well, and I've started 2 companies myself. There's always, I would say to anybody, there's always hustle, right? When you're starting something new. And so just if you're going to be self-employed, you got to expect to hustle and say a lot of yeses when you get started. And then you've got the space to say more no's later, I think. So what would your parting advice be if to a high school student or even a college student who's thinking of photography as a career?
Oh, I'm going to go back to always be shooting, really get out there and then, be okay with your schedule being chaotic. It's never going to be 9 to 5. I'm answering emails all the time. And if you're okay with that, I'm fine to hustle all the time, but some people just aren't built for that. And that's totally fine too. But yeah, I would just get out and shoot and find what you love to shoot. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. So people should follow you because they should, if they're considering photography, they should see what you're doing professionally. So where's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah. So you can check out Ali Wolfe Photography on Facebook. You can check it out on Instagram, and TikTok. Or if you just want to make it easy breezy, you could just go to my website, which is aliwolfe.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks for carving out time for me and to help our families. It is so appreciated.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Lisa.
Take care, Ali.
Thanks.